Hi everybody, I'm Joey Paul and I'm an indie author and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the top 5 authors who have influenced me. When I talk about influenced, I'll talk about have had an effect on what I write, why I write and how I write. Some of them are well-known names, others are more well-known here in the UK, but I do love them all. So here we go. Number 1, Dick Francis. My mum was a big Dick Francis reader when I was in my teens. It was my first time reading adult books along with her because she'd get the audiobooks and play them in the car while we were on long journeys. I know the first book of his that I really adored was called Hot Money. I can't tell you how many times I read it because I loved the audio version so much I saved up to buy myself the complete one as a young adult. It was something to listen to when my first car only had a tape player, which shows my age. And it's a book that has stayed with me throughout my life, one that I still have the audio version for, even if I have no way to play it. Dick Francis is, if you don't know, a British crime writer, and I adored the twists and turns that he made. I loved the big reveal at the end of Hot Money, and it got to the point where I would cycle back and forth to the local library so that I could read it over and over again. He's one of the reasons that I started writing mysteries, though I can't really remember any of his other books. I do know Hot Money backwards and forwards. Number 2, Harlan Coben. This was another introduction through my mum. She will read a book, and even if she loves it, if she has no plans to reread it, she will pass it on. I was lucky enough to have one of these passed on books, and I fell in love with Harlan Coben's writing style. At one point I emailed him and I had a response from the man himself, but then I lost the email when my computer died. But then recently he liked one of my tweets, so that's almost the same thing. Still, sometimes I'm still upset about that. Harlan Coben tells amazing stories. They are a mixture of crime mystery and thrillers, as a lot of the time you will not see the twist coming, and yet when it does, it all fits together so nicely. When I first started writing, I tracked down a full collection of all the books he'd released and read them over and over again. Even now, all these years later, I still read everything he writes. No need to read the blurb, I know that I'll adore it and I've never been wrong. I love the way he tells the story, and it was because of reading his books that I found my own niche in the writing world, my own way of telling my stories, which is an awesome thing to have. Number 3, Sue Grafton. Years ago, before we moved to this house, Bea would take me to the library every week when Miss D did one of her sports lessons. I picked up Ears for Evidence, not realising that it was a series, and settled in to read. And I was hooked from like page 1. Sue Grafton wrote the Alphabet series and sadly died before the final book, Z is for Zero, could be finished and released. I have a habit of rereading the series at least once a year, even though the alphabet stops at Y. She writes about Kinsey Millhone, a PI in the 1980s who's a strong female character. I adore the way the books have aged well, and I love Kinsey so much. Once I'd finished E, I went back to the library and got them all out in order and flew through the series. For the years after that, whenever the new one came out, I would get a copy and lose myself in Grafton's world and storytelling. I have a complete collection of her books, both in paperback and on my Kindle. The storytelling has a way of pulling you into the world and following the steps along with Kinsey, and she writes the book as a final report. I didn't know that they were set from like 1982 up until 1989 until I was up to S's for Silence, and that was just what made them even more amazing in my eyes. Of course, rereading them, I noticed some things I don't like, but it's still a character and stories that I love. I find myself wishing that I could write this way, that they have inspired me to be better at my mystery and crime books. I know that Sue Grafton never wanted her books made into movies or TV, and she left her final wishes that no works be finished by somebody else and published, so the alphabet does literally end at Y is for yesterday. And yet the series doesn't feel unended. I love that Grafton is able to weave threads for each book into the others, but always end the book in a way that you could end the series there. Number 4, Sophie Kinsella. I picked these up when I was about the same age as Becky in the Shopaholic series. Sophie Kinsella is a British contemporary romance author. I devoured the books in days and found myself craving more. Even now, when I mostly read crime and YA, if Sophie releases a book, it will make itself onto my TBR and I'm pretty sure that I would enjoy it. I loved how relatable Becky was. While there were some frustrations with her, the protagonist, you completely understood that she was aware of that. I've adored the series for years and haven't reread them in a while, so maybe I'll do that. Kinsella showed me that you could write light books and still confront serious matters. They're the kind of books that going in as their romance they will have happy ever after, but yet you still find yourself rooting for the characters and hoping it doesn't end badly. I really do love her characters and the world she's created for them, and will probably always want to do light works like hers. And number 5, Jacqueline Wilson. I think it was 2018 when Jacqueline Wilson reached 100 books published, which just blows my mind. She's a middle grade / YA author, and I was given one of her books by my mum to read while sick in bed one day when I was like 9 or 10. I adored it, and since then I have read a lot of her works, but both the recent ones and the ones no longer in print brought used. The biggest fan of Jacqueline Wilson in our house is B, who buys every new release like clockwork and will sit down and read it there and then. The reason she's on my list is because I felt like she showed me that stories can be dark and still be about kids. A lot of her books have been turned into TV shows in the UK, as she is a well-known prolific British author, and they all do tackle hard-hitting topics like homelessness, being a young carer, dealing with bullying, living in a children's home, domestic abuse, and yet they always do it in a way that's accessible to kids, and I think that's really important. It was Wilson who made me realise that I could write YA books without needing to tone them down for the audience. While they won't appeal to everyone, the people they do appeal to are the ones who need to read them. Overall, she's been a constant in my life, and I know that B has all her books, bar a few older ones that she has yet to get hold of because they're out of print. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention her here. So there we go, those are the top 5 authors that have influenced me over the years. A lot of these are people that I read before I started writing, but some of these are the ones I read after I started writing. And all of them have had an impact on the way that I've approached writing and my career and the stories that I tell. So what's one author that's really impacted you? What's one author that's really had an influence on the way you write, if there is one? Let me know down in the comments below. So that's all I've got time for today. If you want to support my channel, you can comment, like or subscribe. I post new videos on Thursdays. You can find me all over social media, and my books are available everywhere. And don't forget to pre-order Cramping Chronicles The First Twinge, and if you do pre-order, don't forget to grab the swag. All the links for which are listed below. Thanks for watching, and remember to keep writing. Bye.